Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to delve into the life of His Grace, Dr. Thomas Mar Makarios.
A senior bishop in the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church.
Yeah, he really had a fascinating life, and we've actually got 2 tributes to help us.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how those different perspectives play out, kind of like...
Yeah, like you're looking at different photographs of the same person, right?
Exactly. You get a more well-rounded picture that way. And, you know, even just preparing for this, I was pretty amazed by all he achieved.
Oh, yeah?
It's really quite a story. He goes from these humble beginnings in India to leadership roles across continents. It almost feels like we're tracing the path of the 20th century Orthodox Church in a way. Would you agree?
Oh, I'd say so for sure. You know, he was born back in 1926 in India.
Okay.
To a very devout family, actually.
Really?
His siblings even dedicated their lives to religious service, and a sister became a nun.
Wow, so it's like...
It really does seem like his path was laid out early on.
Yeah, like it was almost destined.
And although he worked as a school teacher for a little while, it seems like that draw towards a deeper spiritual calling never left.
It's interesting how those early experiences can shape a whole life, you know?
Right. And eventually he did answer that call. He really immersed himself in his studies at the Orthodox Theological Seminary in Kottayam, Kerala.
Oh, wow.
And then in 1952, he was ordained as a priest.
That's pretty amazing.
It is a significant journey in itself. But things really start to pick up from here.
Okay, where does he go next?
Well, he heads to New Delhi.
Oh, wow.
It was still relatively new as India's capital at that time, you know?
Right.
And he went there to establish Orthodox congregations all across North India.
Wow, that must have been a huge undertaking.
Really pioneering work, for sure. And during this period, his deep knowledge of church history and canon law really came in handy.
Oh, why is that?
Well, there were some pretty serious legal battles within the church at the time.
Oh, wow, I hadn't realized it was that intense.
Oh yeah, it was a pretty complex situation.
So he was thrown into the deep end right away then?
Pretty much, having to navigate those divisions and work to secure the church's legal standing in a newly independent India.
Wow, I can't even imagine.
What's remarkable, though, is that he gained respect from all sides of the church, even amidst all those challenges.
That says a lot about his character.
It really does. He was able to find that common ground and work towards unity even when there were disagreements.
It seems like those early challenges really honed his skills as a leader, you know, building bridges and finding compromise.
Exactly. And it's really interesting how that ties into his later work, bringing the Orthodox faith to new communities in the West.
Yeah, but before we jump ahead to all that, I really want to hear more about his academic journey. This is a man who clearly valued knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. From India, he traveled to England, Germany, Switzerland, then France.
Wow, all over.
And he eventually ended up in the United States, where he earned 3 degrees.
Wait, 3?
A Bachelor of Divinity, a Master of Sacred Theology, and then a doctorate in theology.
That's incredible. And from some really top-notch institutions, too.
Oh yeah, for sure. It really makes you wonder how all those diverse academic experiences shaped his worldview and his approach to faith.
That's a great point. It wasn't just like he was locked away in some ivory tower either. He was still out there building and serving his community.
Absolutely. While he was studying in the U.S., he actually established the St. Thomas Indian Orthodox Church in Washington, D.C.
No way. So he's studying and building a church at the same time.
Yeah, he was definitely someone who walked the walk, you know, living his faith and creating spaces for others to connect as well.
That's just remarkable. He wasn't content with just absorbing knowledge. He had to put it into action. It's like he was already laying the groundwork for his future leadership in the diaspora.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? Connecting his deep theological understanding with that practical approach to community building.
Definitely. But before we get to that, I think we need to rewind a bit and talk about his return to India. It feels like that's a pivotal moment in his story.
Oh, you're right. It really is. So when he went back to India, he actually took on a teaching role at the Orthodox Theological Seminary in Kottayam.
Okay, so he's back where he started, sharing his knowledge with the new generation.
Right. But then in 1975, things changed again.
What happened?
He was consecrated as a Metropolitan by His Holiness Catholicos Augin.
Wow.
He took on the name Mar Makarios.
Okay, so that's a pretty big step up in the church, right? He's not just a scholar anymore.
Exactly. And then that very same year, he was appointed as the first Metropolitan of the Bombay Diocese.
It's amazing how quickly he rose through the ranks. You know, it really shows how much respect he commanded.
Oh, for sure. His influence was definitely growing both in India and beyond. But there's still more to come.
I bet. This is where our deep dive gets really interesting for our listeners, especially those who are part of the Indian Orthodox community in North America.
Right, because in 1979, he was installed as the first Metropolitan of the Diocese of America for the Indian Orthodox Church.
Wow, that's a huge milestone. It's like the formal start of a support system for the growing Orthodox community over here.
And he didn't just sit back and watch it grow. He laid the foundation for all sorts of churches and spiritual organizations, especially focusing on the needs of the Indian youth.
It's fascinating how he was able to keep that balance, holding on to the traditions of the faith, but adapting to the needs of a new generation in a different cultural context.
Right. He had this vision for the future of Orthodoxy in the West that went beyond just replicating what was happening in India.
Like he saw a need for the church to evolve.
Exactly, to connect with people living in two cultures.
And I read that his vision wasn't always met with open arms. Some people thought he was going too far, challenging the traditional ways.
Yeah, sometimes his forward-thinking approach caused a bit of friction.
Because he was looking beyond the boundaries of the church in India.
Exactly. But he truly believed that change was necessary for the church to thrive in the West.
It must have taken a lot of courage to challenge the status quo like that, especially within a religious institution.
Oh, definitely. And he didn't shy away from those tough conversations either. He knew how important it was to have dialogue and consider different points of view, even if they clashed with his own.
I wonder if his academic background played a role in that. How he studied all those different schools of thought and religious traditions. Maybe that's what gave him that openness to change.
Yeah, it's very possible. All that exposure to different ideas outside of the traditional theological box probably helped him see the bigger picture.
Right, so he's building bridges not just between cultures, but also between different ways of thinking, like faith and reason. And it wasn't just within the church either, right? He went back to academia.
Oh yeah, in 1985, he became a visiting professor of religion at Alma College in Michigan.
Wait, so this respected religious leader who's so rooted in tradition is now teaching in a secular setting.
It just shows how much he believed in education and dialogue. He wasn't just preaching to the choir, so to speak. He wanted everyone to understand and appreciate the Orthodox faith.
And Alma College clearly saw the value in that because they awarded him an honorary Doctor of Divinity degree in 1990.
Right, and that really speaks to his ability to bridge the gap between faith and academia, to find that common ground and have meaningful conversations with people from all walks of life.
So his life was all about building bridges between cultures, between generations, between faith and reason. And his reach went way beyond the American Diocese too, right?
Yes, in 1992, the American Diocese was split up. And guess what?
What?
He was given leadership of the new Canada, UK, Europe, and Africa Diocese.
Wow, so now he's overseeing Orthodox communities across multiple continents, bringing his unique perspective to a global stage. That's just incredible. He was truly a pioneer, shaping the Orthodox Church in the West and leaving his mark on communities far and wide.
He was. But as you know, his story ends tragically.
Yeah, in January 2008, he had that terrible car accident while visiting the UK.
And sadly, he passed away just a few weeks later, on February 23, 2008.
What a loss. And it's almost like it was meant to be, the date of his death falling on the 57th anniversary of his priesthood ordination and the 74th memorial of St. Mimergis Dionysius of Metropolitan.
Yeah, it's really quite poignant. It shows how deeply connected he was to his faith and his heritage.
And they took his body back to Kerala for burial.
His funeral was led by Karaspis Petilios Marthoma Didymoside himself.
A fitting tribute to a man who left such a lasting legacy.
Indeed.
It's really something to think about how just one person can have such a huge impact, especially in a community as spread out as the Indian Orthodox diaspora.
Yeah, it really shows you the power of dedication, vision, and just genuine love for people.
He really did have all of that.
He did.
And, as we've been talking about his life, the thing that I keep coming back to is that ability to walk that line between tradition and modern thought. He wasn't afraid to shake things up a bit, and like you said, that didn't always make him popular.
Well, yeah, change is hard, especially for something like the church, which has been around for so long.
Exactly.
But he had a way of seeing the bigger picture. Like, he understood that the core values, they're timeless, but the way they're expressed, the way the church interacts with the world, that needs to adapt.
Yeah, it's like he was translating those ancient traditions, making them relevant for people living today.
That's a good way to put it.
It makes me wonder, for our listeners out there, how do you think his vision for the Orthodox Church will continue to evolve, especially for those future generations of American-born Indian youths?
That's a great question, and I think it's something the church is still figuring out. How do you keep hold of your heritage while also fitting into a new culture?
It's tough, isn't it? Finding that balance.
Yeah, you got to hold on to what's important from the past, but also live in the present.
And I think he really gave us a model for doing just that. He showed that it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can bridge those two worlds.
He was definitely a pioneer.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of His Grace Dr. Thomas Mar Makarios, I hope everyone listening has learned a little something about the challenges of faith and cultural change and how one person can truly make a difference.
And maybe you'll even be inspired to look into the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church a little more, explore its history.
There's always something new to learn, right?
That's right, and who knows, you might even find yourself wanting to be part of it all.
Until next time, keep on exploring.
Take care.